Verses 19 to 21. Peter sent the account to others of his friends, "Go, show these things to James, and to the brethren with him, who perhaps were met together in another place at the same time, upon the same errand to the throne of grace, which is one way of keeping up the communion of saints and wrestling with God in prayer, acting in concert, though at a distance, like Esther and Mordecai." He would have James and his company to know of his deliverance, not only that they might be eased of their pain and delivered from their fears concerning Peter, but that they might return thanks to God with him and for him. Observe, though Herod had slain one James with the sword, yet here was another James, and that in Jerusalem too, that stood up in his room to preside among the brethren there, for, when God has work to do, he will never want instruments to do it with. Peter had nothing more to do for the present than to shift for his own safety, which he did accordingly. He departed, and went into another place more obscure, and therefore more safe. He knew the town very well, and knew where to find a place that would be a shelter to him. Note, even the Christian law of self-denial and suffering for Christ has not abrogated and repealed the natural law of self-preservation, and care for our own safety, as far as God gives an opportunity of providing for it by lawful means. Having seen the triumph of Peter's friends in his deliverance, let us next observe the confusion of his enemies thereupon, which was so much the greater because people's expectation was so much raised of the putting of him to death. The guards were in the utmost consternation upon it, for they knew how highly penal it was to them to let a prisoner escape that they had charge of. V18 As soon as it was day, and they found the prisoner gone, there was no small stir or strife, as some read it, among the soldiers, "What had become of Peter? He is gone, and nobody knows how or which way." They thought themselves as sure as could be of him but last night, yet now the bird is flown, and they can hear no tale nor tidings of him. This set them together by the ears. One says, "It was your fault," the other, "Nay, but it was yours," having no other way to clear themselves, but by accusing one another. With us, if but a prisoner for debt escape, the sheriff must answer for the debt. Thus have the persecutors of the gospel of Christ been often filled with vexation to see its cause conquering, notwithstanding the opposition they have given to it. Houses were searched in vain for the rescued prisoner. V19 Herod sought for him, and found him not. Who can find whom God hath hidden? Baruch and Jeremiah are safe, though searched for, because the Lord has hidden them. Jah 36:26. In times of public danger, all believers have God for their hiding place, which is such a secret, that there the ignorant world cannot find them, such a strength, that the impotent world cannot reach them. The keepers were reckoned with for a permissive escape. Herod examined the keepers, and finding that they could give no satisfactory account how Peter got away, he commanded that they should be put to death, according to the Roman law, and that one key. 20:39, If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life go for his life. It is probable that these keepers had been more severe with Peter than they needed to be, as the jailer, ch 16:24, and had been abusive to him, and to others that had been their prisoners upon the like account, and now justly are they put to death for that which was not their fault, and by him too that had set them to work to vex the church. When the wicked are thus snared in the work of their own hands, the Lord is known by the judgments which he executes. Or, if they had not thus made themselves obnoxious to the justice of God, and it be thought hard that innocent men should suffer thus for that which was purely the act of God, we may easily admit the conjectures of some, that though they were commanded to be put to death, to please the Jews, who were sadly disappointed by Peter's escape, yet they were not executed, but Herod's death, immediately after, prevented it. Herod himself retired upon it. He went down from Judea to Caesarea, and there abode. He was vexed to the heart, as a lion disappointed of his prey, and the more because he had so much raised the expectation of the people of the Jews concerning Peter, had told them how he would very shortly gratify them with the sight of Peter's head in a charger, which would oblige them as much as John Baptist's did Herodias. It made him ashamed to be robbed of this boasting, and to see himself, notwithstanding his confidence, disabled to make his words good. This is such a mortification to his proud spirit that he cannot bear to stay in Judea, but away he goes to Caesarea. Josephus mentions this coming of Herod to Caesarea, at the end of the 3rd year of his reign over all Judea, Antique 19.343, and says, "He came thither to solemnize the plays that were kept there, by a vast concourse of the nobility and gentry of the kingdom, for the health of Caesar, and in honor of him." The death of Herod. God reckoned with him, not only for his putting James to death, but for his design and endeavor to put Peter to death, for sinners will be called to an account, not only for the wickedness of their deeds, but for the wickedness of their endeavors, PS 28:4, for the mischief they have done and the mischief they would have done. It was but a little while that Herod lived after this. Some sinners God makes quick work with. Observe how the measure of his iniquity was filled up. It was pride that did it. It is this that commonly goes more immediately before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Nebuchadnezzar had been a very bloody man, and a great persecutor, but the word that was in the king's mouth when the judgments of God fell upon him was a proud word, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built?" Dan 4:30-31. It is the glory of God to look on every one that is proud, and bring him low. Job 40:12. The instance of it here is very remarkable, and shows how God resists the proud. The men of Tyre and Sidon had, it seems, offended Herod. Those cities were now under the Roman yoke, and they had been guilty of some misdemeanors which Herod highly resented, and was resolved they should feel his resentment. Some very small matter would serve such a proud imperious man as Herod was for a provocation, where he was disposed to pick a quarrel. He was highly displeased with this people, and they must be made to know that his wrath was as the roaring of a lion, as messengers of death. The offenders truckled, being convinced, if not that they had done amiss, yet that it was in vain to contend with such a potent adversary, who, right or wrong, would be too hard for them. They submitted and were willing upon any terms to make peace with him. The reason why they were desirous to have the matter accommodated, because their country was nourished by the king's country. Tyre and Sidon were trading cities, and had little land belonging to them, but were always supplied with corn from the land of Canaan. Judah and Israel traded in their market with wheat and honey, and oil, Ease 27:17. Now if Herod should make a law to prohibit the exportation of corn to Tyre and Sidon, which they knew not but a man so revengeful as he might soon do, not caring how many were famished by it, their country would be undone, so that it was their interest to keep in with him. And is it not then our wisdom to make our peace with God, and humble ourselves before him, who have a much more constant and necessary dependence upon him than one country can have upon another? For in him we live, and move, and have our being. The method they took to prevent a rupture, they made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, probably with bribes and good presents. That is usually the way for men to make courtiers their friends. And it is the hard fate of princes that they must have not only their affairs, but their affections too, governed by such mercenary tools. Yet such men as Herod, that will not be governed by reason, had better be so governed than by pride and passion. Blastus had Herod's ear, and has the art of mollifying his resentments, and a time is fixed for the ambassadors of Tyre and Sidon to come and make a public submission, to beg his majesty's pardon, throw themselves upon his clemency, and promise never again to offend in the like manner, and that which will thus feed his pride shall serve to cool his passion.